The fighting in Ukraine stands out because both Russia and Ukraine use some of the most modern weapon systems ever built. The battlefield is filled with advanced drones, even if they don't always look fancy, complex air defense setups, and accurate guided weapons showing decades of military progress from both Soviet and NATO sources. And yet, when it comes to real results on the ground, one of the most dependable tools used by either side is something incredibly basic that goes all the way back to the Second World War. We're speaking about fake weapons or dummy equipment made to trick enemy forces. Inflatable fakes are taking on a bigger role in Ukraine's defense plans, and as you'll discover, they might be making Russia waste millions of dollars in ammunition every single month. The fake weapons used by Ukrainians follow such a straightforward idea that even a commander from before World War II would understand right away. But in 2025, they're proving just as useful as all the artificial intelligence and self-operating systems Russia has thrown at the problem. To share some background on decoys, in 1944, during Operation Fortitude, the Allies used inflatable tanks and pretend airplanes to fool Nazi Germany into placing its troops in the wrong spots before the D-Day landings. The so-called Ghost Army was used across more than 20 separate battle areas in WW2, making the Allies' forces look bigger than they really were to push the Germans into overcomplicating their strategy. Back then, the fakes worked because they only needed to fool people on the ground and spy planes watching from a fair distance. But as drone technology has made spotting targets from above easier than ever, you might think fakes would become useless. More visibility should mean they're simpler to see through, correct? It turns out that modern drones have actually made fakes stronger, not weaker. And that's where Ukraine's cleverness shows up. The person behind Ukraine's current collection of inflatable tricks is named Viktor Talanov. He didn't begin his work in defense manufacturing. His specialty was inflatable sports gear, hot air balloons, and even kids' bounce houses. But those abilities transferred well to making believable copies of older Soviet equipment that have been used not just by Ukrainian troops, but also by British and American forces during practice sessions and mission planning. So why do these fakes matter so much? First, we need to face the obvious issue: supply. While Ukraine still has a decent amount of Soviet-era weapons left from when it belonged to the Soviet Union before that country broke apart, its tanks are slowly being used up by the fighting. And while Ukrainian forces would naturally rather have a real tank that can attack enemy positions or shoot at approaching troops, the current battlefield situation also supports another choice: believable targets. Because of how many drones are flying around, tanks have become especially noticeable targets for drone groups. So, when Ukraine can't replace a tank with a brand new one from a factory, it can use its fake tanks to lure enemy drones into making poorly timed attacks that give away their positions and need supply support to carry out. The money side of this move definitely helps. While there's no exact number on how much each fake costs, most guesses put the price in the lower 4 digits, meaning about $1,000. Compare that to a real M1 Abrams, which costs around $9 to $13 million for the modern version sold to other countries. An M-Positionally multiple launch rocket system, or the well-known HIMARS, both cost several $millions for the launcher itself. By using inflatable copies instead of actual tanks, Ukraine makes it look like it has a much larger budget and threat level in key parts of the front where Russia absolutely must use its resources. And Russia is falling for it. News stations have repeatedly shared drone videos showing what they say are major battlefield wins. Clip after clip shows them hitting important Ukrainian weapons, but some of those wins were never real. They were inflatable fakes. And we know this because of how the Russians filmed them and showed them off as victories. The accuracy and the apparent damage pattern are both too neat. Russia even figured out it hit a fake at some point, but propaganda beat honest reporting to give made-up news to the country's people. Meanwhile, the real Ukrainian weapons were somewhere else completely, safe and ready to keep doing their job. The fakes work because of uncertainty. Even when a Russian drone pilot thinks they're looking at a fake, that hesitation itself becomes a weapon. According to Talanov, hesitation slows down choices and breaks up the speed of operations. A Russian drone pilot has to ask themselves, is this a fake or not? Should I shoot at it? Should I call for an airstrike? Or should I move on and find a better target? Every moment spent wondering is a moment the pilot isn't doing spy work or planning attacks. And when you're running military actions across hundreds of miles of battle line, Those moments add up to hours, and those hours add up to lost speed. Ukraine makes this effect even stronger by constantly shifting the fakes to new spots. They move them just like they would move the actual weapons. This only makes the trick seem more real. Russian intelligence experts see movement. They see what looks like real tactical repositioning. They start to believe they're tracking live targets, and all the while, they're just following the fakes around the battlefield. Most of these inflatable setups can be put in place within minutes, which cuts down the time Ukrainian soldiers are in danger, but it also means they can be quickly moved, making Russia's targeting picture even more confusing. The design behind the fakes is also surprisingly advanced. Many of them have built-in heat makers that give them infrared signals, closely matching real vehicles when seen through thermal cameras or targeting scopes. So, a drone pilot checking the target with thermal sensors sees some kind of heat pattern that looks like what a real tank engine might give off, combined with a visual look, and with the natural stress and hurry in drone missions. It's easy to see how pilots might be tricked. After all, if it looks like a tank and acts like a tank, why wouldn't it be a tank? Future versions are going even further. Ukrainian engineers are reportedly adding smoke makers meant to copy engine fumes and electronic parts, able to send out false radio or radar signals. That fake would actually sound real to radar systems too. At that point, telling it apart from a genuine weapon would need someone to actually get close to it, and that's something Russian forces are careful about doing, and Ukrainian forces won't let happen. To be fair, Russia has tried a similar method, since there's nothing especially secret about the idea. It has put out inflatable fighter jets at northern air bases and fake T-72 tanks in Ukraine, but Western experts usually think the Russian versions are less believable. They miss the careful details, the engineering quality, and the total commitment to the trick that Ukraine has shown. It's another small example of how Ukraine is outthinking a much bigger military force. But the real cleverness of Ukraine's fake strategy isn't just the fakes themselves. It's how the plan fits into a wider collection of simple solutions that are steadily draining Russia's military supplies. While fakes are certainly useful, they're just one piece of a much bigger set of tools Ukrainian forces have built to keep drones away. Take fishing nets, for example. Along the front lines, Ukrainian troops have set up fishing nets to catch and stop incoming drones. This sounds like something from a funny movie, but against certain drone types, it works amazingly well. Fiber optic drones have been especially affected by this defense. These drones have a roll of cable that slowly unwinds as the drone flies. You can't block a cable or trick the signal that's being sent straight to the drone, but the fishing net gets tangled in the drone or even manages to cut the cable, removing the drone from the fight completely. Even other drones have become helpful tools in fighting off endless groups. Ukrainians have made simple FPV drones that cut fiber optics, but have also gone as far as building a drone that has a small loaded shotgun it uses to literally shoot enemy drones out of the air. Then there's the solution that costs almost nothing but can work surprisingly well: regular guns and machine gun fire. Soldiers on both sides use rifles and machine guns to shoot drones out of the sky. It's not always dependable, but it needs almost no special equipment, no expensive systems, and no extra training beyond what soldiers already know. The more complex versions of that idea are groups of matched rifles, basically homemade setups where multiple guns fire together at a target. Russia has put out vehicles made specially as mobile anti-drone gun platforms, mounting several automatic weapons on light frames with custom anti-drone gear. They're not as advanced as what Western armies are creating, but they work, and they can be used. Some of the most creative answers involve what you might call armor blocking. Both Ukraine and Russia have added extra layers of protection to their tanks. The starting point was simple metal sheets, which then changed into branches of wire and pipes that stopped the drone from getting close to the tank and setting off its explosive package in the first place. And then there's perhaps the strangest measure. Ukrainian forces saw Russian strategic bombers covered with old tires as simple drone protection. When that didn't work, Russia eventually painted tires on its planes. They gave up so completely that they didn't even bother with real tires anymore, just using paint. But that can be strangely effective against modern systems. But before we explain why, did you know that the military show makes fresh videos every day to give you the best and most complete look into the interesting world of global politics and military gear? So hit that subscribe button and stay ahead of what's happening. The big point about the difference between using fakes and using paint or other simple systems is that they're made to trick two totally different watching methods. On one side, you have the human pilot, the one who guides your normal FPV drone into making the strike. At close distances, making a realistic fake setup works because it tricks the pilot into thinking they're looking at the real thing. If not, we go back to the earlier doubt issue, which adds time and effort needed to figure out the fake to avoid wasting valuable ammunition or even whole drones on something that's ultimately harmless. On the other side, there's the computer side. Visual guidance and machine learning systems track targets based on set ideas of what they look like. Having a realistic fake makes them mark the fake as a target and tell the pilot to check it out. But using camouflage or something unexpected, like tires painted on planes or covering tanks, does the exact opposite. By breaking the normal shape of the vehicle, a system that only uses machine vision might completely miss it. Then, the only real way to decide what is a good target is to go back to using human eyes to figure out what is real and what isn't. Either way, the simple systems work because they waste time, money, and supplies, forcing both sides to use more for the goal. And that's why some of the most useful answers against drones are usually cheap and straightforward. The whole money structure of the war has become totally flipped from what we're used to seeing at the start of the century. An accurate drone or interceptor missile might cost a few $1,000,000. An inflatable fake costs only thousands. When you're trying to defend against groups of drones costing $1,000 to $10,000 each, the expensive high-tech answer starts to look ridiculous next to the simple other choice. Why spend money on $100,000 laser systems or multi-million-dollar air defense missiles when a few inflatable fakes and some fishing nets can get similar results for a tiny part of the cost? It's why the US has been working hard to create a microwave weapon that can set off a drone from far away by messing up its inside systems. In theory, even if the equipment itself costs millions, it only uses electricity as power and doesn't need bullets. You just turn it on and aim at drones. But without high-tech systems that are only starting to be tested in the field and might not be ready for years, Ukraine needs defense options right now, and it needs them to be made from materials that can be found quickly and are, by themselves, easy to replace. That is exactly why the inflatable fakes are such a useful answer. They're inexpensive, dependable, and are in such large supply that they're a resource by themselves. Of course, the money idea behind drone warfare works the other way too. Both Ukraine and Russia are using drones on offense to drain each other's economies and factory systems completely. Drones are much cheaper and simpler to build than normal military gear, and the lack of good defense systems against them means they're a constant danger to military bases, not just on the front, but possibly hundreds of miles away. And at this size, Ukraine looks like it's taken the lead. It has built drones that can strike hundreds of miles into Russia's land, destroying ammunition storage areas and gas and energy systems like refineries. Numbers from late 2025 suggest that drone actions have caused an 18% drop in Russia's oil processing ability, given that Russia has usually depended on gas and oil processing and sales to make up to 40% of its government income. Cutting that by almost a fifth is a real blow to Russia's ability to pay for the war in the first place. And Russia is already struggling under the weight of all the losses it has collected. A CSIS report guesses that Russia has suffered around 1.2 million casualties in Ukraine, including up to 325,000 troop deaths between February 2022 and December 2025. This creates a slightly speeding up pattern where each year is likely to be deadlier than the one before. Of course, there's another problem in that Russia no longer has as many people to draft for use in the war. Early 2025 was notable because Russia failed to train enough soldiers to balance out the growing losses. The losing people problem got so bad that Russia officially started with all-year drafting in January 2026. The new rule makes it harder for drafted soldiers to try to avoid being pulled into military service or leaving the country before signing up for duty. This can help explain why we're seeing flat numbers everywhere, and why most of the battlefield wins throughout 2025 were mentioning thin strips of land or a couple of villages. Russia simply doesn't have enough men to replace on the front line to make real progress. If this continues, we might see the same in 2026, with the casualty rate leveling off and staying steady or dropping, as fewer and fewer soldiers are being put in danger in the war, and the drone actions are only making this worse. The more common drones are, the fewer people are needed to run them. Basically, the war in Ukraine, as we see, involves many drones on both sides trying to gain ground by pushing through weak spots. The 800-mile front line across Ukraine is practically empty, simply because most of the fighting is done by partly automated systems fighting each other, where traditional military gear is being used for target practice. So this is the situation where Ukraine's fake strategy becomes so smart. It's not just a battlefield trick. It's part of a bigger campaign of economic wearing down. Every time Russia shoots at a fake, it's choosing not to shoot at something real. It's using up ammunition that takes factories months to make again. It's burning fuel that's in short supply. It's straining drone pilots and command centers that are already stretched thin. The total effect is that Russia's military machine is wearing itself out from the inside. Ukraine isn't winning this war through raw military strength. Ukraine is winning by being smarter, quicker, and more flexible than an opponent with more total military power, but far less ability to change. Russia had the advantage in terms of equipment, people, and factory ability when the war began. 3.5 years later, those advantages have been steadily worn down by Ukrainian creativity, Western help, and Russia's own inside problems. And this brings up a completely important question about the future of fighting itself. What happens when AI and self-operating weapons meet the lesson that Ukraine has just shown the world? Both sides are building AI-powered targeting systems. But both sides are using phishing nets and fakes. And the phishing nets in rubber seem to be winning more often than the AI systems. That's not because technology doesn't count, but because at one point depending too much on technology makes the simple system too cheap to fight back against. This is especially true for self-operating drone groups. If a group is programmed to target certain signals or shapes, and those signals are deliberately faked across the battlefield, the group becomes less useful at doing its job. You end up with the same situation we see now. Expensive systems attacking cheap fakes while the real targets escape. Ukraine's success with simple solutions in the time of advanced weapons suggests something deep about the character of 21st century conflict. It's not about who has the most advanced technology. It's about who can use things more effectively, more cheaply, and more quickly than their opponent. By the time Russia understands what's happening, it's too late. They've already spent billions of rubles on ammunition for targets that don't exist. They've already wasted countless hours of drone pilot time on false paths. They've already created strategic holes in their defenses that they don't have the supplies to fill. A 100-year-old weapon, combined with modern supply networks and spread-out production, has become one of Russia's most serious strategic troubles. Thanks for watching. If you want to check out how Ukraine is managing to keep up in drone making, check out this video. And to stay current with the Russia-Ukraine conflict and all matters of global politics, subscribe to my channel for daily videos.